Hello everybody, thanks very much indeed for joining us for the first free practice session of the day here at the Lausitzring. Sunshine is kind of out, it's a little bit cloudy. There is a potential threat of some rain, maybe even some storms this afternoon, but for now, slightly breezy, quite nice and pleasant in the early 20s, 23 degrees Celsius, and a great weekend lined up ahead of us for the second weekend of the 2024 season, the 40th anniversary year of DTM. And there you can see the industrial surroundings of this circuit, because it was built back in 2000 on the site of a huge open cast former coal mine, and the remnants of that are left all around as you come into the entrance to this vast venue. Let's take a look at the circuit then, just under 3.5 kilometres long. It runs on part of the tri-oval here. That's the end and beginning of the lap. It runs in anti-clockwise direction, and we had the closest ever finish in DTM race history here, just 89 thousandths of a second separating Nico Müller as he just pipped a charging René Rast to the line in a 1-2 finish for Audi just a few years ago. And there it is, just how close it was. A fantastic race that was, a thrilling finish, and we've had some great racing here over the years. Look at that, 89 thousandths of a second after an hour of racing. First ever race here, or race weekend here, was back in 2000, but the race never happened. That was because of monsoon-like rain. So actually the first winner around the Lausitzring was Scottish driver Peter Dunbreck in a Mercedes in 2001. There you can see those sort of rolling thick clouds above us, which might get a bit thicker as the day goes on. We've got 55 minutes of practice in this new slightly longer format that we have for 2024 for free practice one, but then it's back to the usual 45 minutes in the afternoon. So it's due to get underway at 5 past midday. In about 3 minutes time, we'll get the cars on track, and this afternoon local time here in Germany, 3:45 until 4:30 will be the time for free practice 2. Much cooler than it was when we were here last year, because last time we came was in August, in the middle of the 2023 season, and it was red hot. Air temperatures pushing 32, 34 degrees, drivers getting out of cars absolutely exhausted and sodden with sweat. It was really tough work for the drivers here last year. But it was also a glorious weekend for Jack Aitken, because he got his first win in DTM here last year. Mirko Bortolotti was the other winner. We'll talk about that. But there is the point standings after the first weekend at Oschersleben. Luca Engstler, who took his maiden victory in the DTM in race 2, holds the championship lead, coming here by just 1 point from race 1 winner at Oschersleben, Jack Aitken. Luca Stoltz, super consistent, could have won race 2, but the full course yellow and the safety car and the pit stop didn't go his way, but he's third in the championship, just behind as well. But look at that, Thomas Preining, reigning champion, down in 12th place, only 9 points scored. And a tough weekend for all of the Porsche drivers really at Oschersleben, where Porsche had such a good weekend at that circuit in 2023. We'll come on to potential reasons for that very shortly, but let's just introduce ourselves first. My name's Chris Hartley. I'm up here at the very top of the main grandstand overlooking the start-finish straight in the commentary box. Thank goodness there's a lift to get up here, otherwise I'd have a heart attack. It's a fantastic view though. You can see the whole of the circuit from up here. This grandstand in itself can hold 25,000 people, just the one grandstand. It's a huge venue. We've got the tri-oval banking. This was opened as an IndyCar circuit back in the day. We use the infield, but they come out onto the banking at the end of the lap. They go at over 255 kilometers an hour down the tri-oval into what's a very tight first corner, hard on the brakes down to second gear, and then they turn off through what's a tight, twisty infield. So my name's Chris Hartley, and alongside me up here in the higher reaches of the Lausitzring, it's good afternoon now to Brian Oliver.
Good afternoon, Chris. Yeah, it's a bit unusual saying good afternoon instead of good morning. Of course, everything a little bit later this weekend, certainly today and tomorrow. But yes, there's definite sense of being at the top of the mountain at the moment. We've got a lovely view here from our commentary position at this wonderful circuit, the tri-oval. Of course, not using all of the tri-oval, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? But using sections of it, a spectacular especially out of turn 11 into turn 12, and then flat out along past the pits in towards turn 1. These cars look magnificent as they run up against the wall, and then using another part of the tri-oval out of turn 5 into turn 6. It's a track not like any other, really. Quite spectacular. We're expecting some great racing, of course. Remembering that heat, it was, as you said, less than a year ago when we had that really hot weather and that hot weekend. It feels a bit warm here again today. Could be another hot weekend coming up.
And that's the one of the walls you have to get as close as you dare to, especially coming out of the final turn at turn 12, where you leave the infield section and come back out onto the banking. You're building up already at about 170 kilometres an hour when you come back onto the banking, and then, as I say, they reach just shy of 260 kilometres an hour, which is just under 160 miles an hour when they then hit the brakes at the end of this long straight underneath the grandstand. But it's not just about speed here, because the infield is very tight and twisty, Brian. It's almost two entirely different circuits sort of blended into one. And what you need here more than anything is good traction, because there are a lot of slow second and third gear corners. So you need a car which is balanced coming out of the corners and where the traction is good as well to get you up to speed.
Yeah, it's a very technical circuit and quite hard to get it right all the way around. It's also a very bumpy circuit. A lot of the drivers talking about how the fillings get shaken out, if any of these drivers have such things, as they head around this circuit. I mean, it's been here for a while, the tarmac has, and I don't think it's been resurfaced in a while, but certainly quite bumpy and can catch a number of drivers out.
And we saw that thrilling finish that we had between Nico Müller and René Rast a few years ago, 89 thousandths of a second, the closest finished in DTM history, coming here at the Lausitzring. But Brian, we also had a pretty spectacular race too here last year, with nose-to-tail action pretty much all the way through the race, didn't we? Yes, although Riccardo Fella, he's probably less enthusiastic about it, because he pushed all the way, almost literally, Mirko Bortolotti in those intense conditions. We saw drivers collapsing as they were getting out of the cars after the race, the second race last time here. But Riccardo Fella, if I remember right, he spent the entire race inhaling the exhaust fumes from the Mirko Bortolotti Lamborghini. Yeah, he probably went to bed that night with an image of Mirko Bortolotti's rear wing still emblazed upon his his memory, because just all the way around the race they were nose to tail. There was never an overtake, but it was thrilling to watch.
Oh, that's great.
How close they were, how fair they were with each other, and just great defensive driving. And Mirko Bortolotti in intense heat had to soak up all that pressure as well, and he said that was his best performance so far. He had a good weekend here, got on the podium in the first race as well, but the first race of the weekend, and there is Mirko Bortolotti's car, number 92, just been pushed back into the garage now for SSR Performance. The first race was won by Ferrari and Jack Aitken. This is where Jack Aitken and Emil Frey Racing, who were in their first season in DTM last year, got their maiden victory on the Saturday. And of course Jack had a very good Saturday at Oschersleben, but not such a good Sunday for the team.
Yes, it was a traumatic Sunday, that was for sure. But on the Saturday, taking that win, of course, it was a non-finish on the Sunday, but taking the win on the Saturday, launching himself very much as one of the pre-season favourites in the championship. I would say last year, the Emil Frey Racing team were getting to grips with that Ferrari 296, and it was new territory for all of them. But this year, they are serious about the title. And Jack Aitken, well, he's not off, well, he is doing other stuff, but not during DTM weekends. He's going to be here for every race this year, which is great news for all of his supporters, of which there are many, certainly back in the UK, because he has his eyes on the championship. Jack Aitken is not here to make up the numbers. No, I think it's fair to say pretty much all the drivers in DTM have busy lives, don't they? Because most of them race in something else, or if you're Kelvin van der Linde, in about 19 other different championships as well. Lots of them race in GT World Challenge Europe, in the World Endurance Championship, in hypercars, if you're a Mirko Bortolotti or René Rast or Sheldon van der Linde. Kelvin van der Linde was out in action in Berlin, not too far from here, in Formula E recently as well. And in the case of Jack Aitken, he's a serious title contender for the IMSA Sports Car Championship. They've had 4 race weekends. He's had 3 second place finishes. Been a little bit frustrated not quite to get the race victory. He's come close on a couple of occasions, particularly at Daytona, but at Laguna Seca, where he was last out, another second place finish. So he's looking to
have a dual successful campaign. But as you say, Sunday was disastrous really for the team, having got the race victory on Saturday. Jack Aitken in a good position at the start of the race, but there was contact early on, picked up a puncture, and he was out of the race. And there was another Ferrari in a dramatic exit to the race mid-distance after a big clash with René Rast and Thierry Vermeulen coming off into the tyre barrier, and out of the race he went. So there were no points scored at all for the team on Sunday. You're looking then at one of our onboard camera drivers this weekend, and he's rather a good one because he's last year's champion, Sheldon van der Linde, and well, champion 2 years ago rather, Sheldon van der Linde in the BMW, a driver lineup that is really a dream driver lineup for the Schubert Motorsport team, because they've got the 2022 champion Sheldon van der Linde, they've got the three-time champion René Rast and two-time champion Marco Wittmann in their driver lineup. It was heartbreak for Marco last time out at Oschersleben, wasn't it, with looking like he was going to get an unlikely victory in a first victory for nearly 2 years. He led the race with about 5.5 minutes to go after by admission is, hang on a minute, we'll get team radio first from Ricardo Feller.
Have you checked the focus yellow speed on your outlet?
Yes, I did.
Of course he did, he knows what he's doing. Yeah, just to show, isn't it, that part of this free practice session, Brian, is all about just checking systems, checking the radios, checking the pit lane speed limiter, checking the full course yellow speed limiter, just running through housekeeping initially at the start of this session. But yeah, Marco Wittmann, who went into the pits at exactly the right time and leapt from 17th to first place, because he went into the pits just before a full course yellow came out. So he kind of lucked into that, but of course then once he got the lead, he drove well, he was able to keep Jack Aitken behind him, and then the car just ground to a halt with a fuel issue, didn't it?
Yes, but all credit to the Schubert team. They put their hands up. Torsten Schubert said this was a mistake on our team's part, not enough fuel, exactly 20 litres short. And he said that because we'd had a very delayed day on the Saturday, with qualifying being delayed because of various red flags, he said the Schubert crew were very hectic over the lunchtime, but Torsten was refusing to hold an individual responsible. He said we stand behind it as a team, and that's really, really good stuff. Our Schubert Motorsport, legendary team, and Torsten Schubert, a legendary character, and kind of motivating the team from the front, despite what would have been a fairly distressing day.
On their home circuit as well.
Yes,
literally
indeed.
Based just outside the circuit. In fact, Torsten was responsible for the building of Oschersleben, or one of the people responsible for it. It wasn't a great weekend for this driver we've been watching either. He's just gone off screen, but Thomas Preining, the reigning champion, 11th in the championship. He scored points in both races at Oschersleben, with a 10th being his best in race 1, 10th and 13th. And as you see him run through into turn 1, what they've been saying, and we heard this on the radio, on team radio from Thomas during the race, was that the car was completely unbalanced, particularly at the front. They were really struggling with understeer on the Porsche. But one key change this year is a change in the balance of performance. The balance of performance, which you can alter the boost on a car, you can alter the amount of weight that's added to a car, you put an air restrictor in. It's just to balance out these different types of cars, which have different amounts of horsepower, different strengths and weaknesses, to make them as closely matched as possible. But the big change this year for Porsche is that the ride height has increased by 5 millimetres. So the car is 5 millimetres higher up, higher off the road than it was. And of course, as a race car, what you want to be is as low to the ground as possible. Think Formula One, think being right down, sucked down onto the ground. The higher the ride height, a bit more unstable the car becomes. And so it's 10 millimetres now rather than 5. The technical director explained they have to raise the back end of the car up a little bit more to offset that as well. So that goes up another couple of millimetres to 7 millimetres more than it was last year. So it's really had a big effect on the handling of the car, and it's not something they were able to test pre-season, because they did do a test there at Oschersleben, but it was 3 days before the BOP was announced. They tested with their old setup and then kind of went into the day cold, and of course there's far less opportunity with the testing ban this year, and only 5 days per driver per team allowed of testing to try these things out. So something they're going to have to balance up. Do they use up more of these test days now to just get a feel for the car with this new ride height that they've got, or do they save them and try and be competitive anyway?
Yeah, and you think, if you look at 5mm on a ruler, you think, well, that's nothing, is it? At a car the size of a Porsche, and it makes that much difference. And you realise how critical it is. This is precision engineering, precision sport, precision driving, extracting the most out of the driver and the car. And 5mm making all of that difference. As we ride on board with Thomas Preining at the moment, he's got a 122.110 on the board in third place. But of course, it's getting that set up at the moment, and this session is absolutely crucial because of the limit on testing. So it is finding the limits, and they don't have time to be messing around with lots of different setups today. They need to be working hard now to get it right for quali and for the race.
Yeah, Thomas Preining last year here at the Lausitzring didn't have a fantastic weekend either. He didn't get on the podium, which was a rarity. In fact, it was the only weekend of the entire season where he didn't get at least one podium finish at Lausitzring. He did get a 4th place in race 2, but in race 1, if you cast your mind back, he was involved in an incident at the start of the race with a couple of other drivers. I think Luca Exler was one of them, Front Pereira was another, and he was the judge to have caused it. So he got, not for the first time last season, a run through the penalty box, which cost him 5 seconds or so, but also an awful lot of places and time. So Thomas Preining was actually much more competitive than the 15th place in race 1 would have you believe. But that aside, it still wasn't the strongest circuit for Porsche and for the Manthey team last year. So they'll be a bit frustrated, but they've had a bit of time to work on it because they've had this 1 month gap between rounds 1 and 2, and certainly for Abt Sportsline they've been pleased about that, because there was an issue with Kelvin van der Linde's car. He was relative to his teammate off the pace all weekend, struggling with the car. He did drag some decent points out of it with a top 6 finish on Sunday, but it was a frustrated Kelvin van der Linde for a lot of the weekend. They've then stripped the car down since the Oschersleben round and found out that the Audi had a crack in the welding, one of the joins in the welding, so the car certainly had lost a lot of its stiffness and handling, and that was why Kelvin was struggling. So they've been pleased at that gap to be able to work on the car, and they're confident now it's back to where it should be, because actually Riccardo Feller was competitive all weekend and got on the podium, didn't he?
Yes, one of the cracks in the welding was apparently on the part of the car that holds the splitter, and the splitter, it turns out, was at an angle, so that was really going to affect the handling. Of course, the splitter, an absolute critical part in generating the downforce and the handling of the car. So they'll be hopeful that it was the problem, that they found it, sorted it, and back into action this weekend. Hopefully things are looking good for them. Kelvin van der Linde currently in the 121s. He's second place on the screens, a 121.816. Let's just revise that, a 121.557. So it's Kelvin van der Linde who goes quickest. Champion Thomas Preining in second in the Porsche, and Lucas Stoltz in the Mercedes AMG. Always there, always under the radar, and always somewhere near the top of the timing screens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mercedes, this has been a strong track for them over the years. In the GT era, since 2021, most podiums for any of the brands has gone to Mercedes. They've had 6 podiums here. Audi have had 5, Ferrari 3, BMW 2, Lamborghini have had 2 as well. In terms of race wins, there was a double victory for Mercedes in 2021, Philipp Ellis and Maximilian Götz, who went on to win the title that year. Both races in 2022 were won by Sheldon van der Linde's BMW, and last year Lucas Stoltz in the Mercedes was a winner, and Mirko in 2023, Lucas Stoltz got on the podium, and Mirko Bortolotti won in the Lamborghini race 2. Jack Aitken was the winner of race 1. So Mercedes a strong record here. They had good testing here a couple of weeks ago as well. And another Mercedes driver who loves this place is Lucas Auer. He almost considered this his home circuit, because back in the day he was a regular driver in the German Formula 3 Championship for the Muka Motorsport team, and based in Berlin. This was their home circuit. He used to do a lot of testing here, and this in DTM was where Lucas Auer got his first ever DTM race victory in 2016. He won again in 2017, and he won again in 2020. And there's only one other driver in DTM history that's had more race wins around this place than Lucas Auer, and that's Gary Paffett. And he's had 4 victories. So Lucas Auer and Lucas Stoltz, I definitely think, are going to be a pair to watch this weekend in the Mercedes.
Yes, and Lucas Auer is another one who's just solid, isn't he? So Lucas Stoltz He got a 5th and a 3rd at Oschersleben. Lucas Auer, he got a 6th and 11th, and it's just picking up those points as Mirko Bortolotti using all of the track and maybe just a little bit more, but it's consistently picking up those points, isn't it? Do we find that a non-finish in one of these races can hurt you so hard, hurt you so badly? It's those consistent finishes in the points every race. That's what helped Thomas Preining to that championship last year, and the drivers looking for that consistency throughout a weekend.
He's also had 4 pole positions here, Lucas Auer, and a 2nd in 2016 and a 3rd in 2022 on top of his 3 victories as well. So we'll see how he gets on. To give you an impression of how quickly they are going, qualifying record set by Jack Aitken here last year was 1 minute 19.9. And our best lap so far is 1:21.5, so about 1.6 seconds off the qualifying pace. Of course, you'd expect them not to be going quite as quickly as they will in qualifying trim, but it's not too bad a lap time. Kelvin van der Linde, Thomas Preining and Aingen Nguyen, the fastest 3 so far. But the body language of Mirko Bortolotti's Lamborghini, the SSR performance car, looks pretty rapid as he makes his way around a lap. Where is he at the moment? He's mid-table. He's just got up to 9th with his most previous lap, so he's certainly pushing on in the number 92 Lamborghini. And a win and a 2nd and a pole position here last year, plus the form that he showed at Oschersleben. And again, he was somebody else, like a lot of drivers really, had one good day and one bad day, didn't he? Because having got pole position for day 2 at Oschersleben, looked like a race victory, or at least a podium would be on the cards. But the pit stop was a nightmare for the team. Lost an awful lot of time, and he dropped way down the order as a result of that.
Yeah, they also had traumas for teammate Nicky Tim's pit stop as well. They've been analysing that. They say we still don't know the exact reason. Maybe the wheel wasn't tightened enough. If you screw the wheel nut with less torque, it's possible to actually gain a few tenths or hundredths of a second. It's that critical in the pit stops. But the team boss, Mario Schubauer, was making no comment about that. But clearly some issues with the pit stop, both cars with those failures. And that was a little bit close to the wall. I think he might have collected a camera somewhere out there as well.
That was Nicky Tim getting a bit too close to the pit wall, or not the pit wall, the wall on the exit to turn 12. So I think it was Kelvin van der Linde and then Marco Wittmann getting pretty close, as you have to do. Get on the throttle as quickly as you can, get as close to the wall as you dare. But it was definitely contact there between the number 94 Nicky Tim driven Lamborghini and, if not the wall, then the camera that's attached to it, which is now got to be replaced at some point for the rest of the weekend if they've got a spare. Yeah, tough weekend for Nicky Tim as well, wasn't it? He said, I had a chat with him, and he'd had that off in qualifying 1, where it'd been looking good. He'd actually set the 5th quickest lap time, then went off at turn 2, I think he went off, and that then caused him to lose his best lap time. If you cause a red flag in qualifying, you lose your best lap time. So he started way down the order. There was quite a bit of damage to the car. There wasn't much time to fix it. He went out, and the car just didn't feel right, so he retired the car. And then day 2 looked better until, as you say, pit stop dramas. So he's a little bit on the back foot, but great driver, Nicky Tim, former Porsche champion, and it'll be good support this year, I think, for Mirko Bortolotti.
Yeah, in the qualifying session that after the qualifying session where he had the crash, he said the steering wheel is crooked and the track is distorted. We'd better stop before I put the car back in the wall. There's a bit of honesty there, I saw. But all credit to him, he was one of the first people to rush up and congratulate Luca Engsler on his win, which was really nice sportsmanship, because he had an utterly rubbish weekend, unlike Luca Engsler, but one of the first drivers to go up and congratulate him.
Which brings us on to chat about full course yellows, really, which has been quite a hot topic, hasn't it? So the rule last year was that you have to make a mandatory pit stop in a DTM race. Last year, you could make that mandatory pit stop if there was a safety car or a full course yellow. But obviously, a little bit of that comes down to chance. If you happen to make your pit stop the lap before a full course yellow or a safety car, and then somebody else comes in the lap after during one of those periods, obviously everybody that's on track is then going very slowly behind either full course yellow conditions or a safety car, so you don't lose a lot of ground to them while you make your pit stop. It's a huge advantage. So obviously there's a bit of strategy, because you can go, well, let's leave our pit stop as late as possible and give ourselves as much chance of picking up a safety car pit stop as we can. But the thinking is, well, it shouldn't really ever come down to luck. So they changed the rule this year and said, right, that doesn't count anymore. If there's a full course yellow or there's a safety car, by all means you can come in the pits, but it will not count as your mandatory pit stop. You'll have to come in again. But kind of ironically, both races, the result, well, almost in race one, the result was determined because drivers had happened to have come in to the pit lane just seconds before the full course yellow was thrown in both races. And if you're in the pit lane already, past the line, and you're in the pit lane, that is okay, that counts once the full course yellow is declared. So that's what happened with Marco Wittmann. He went from 17th to 1st. Undoubtedly helped out Luca Engstler as well. He went on to take the race victory. So now, of course, everybody that was disadvantaged by that or moaning about it, only Fritz from HRT not very happy about it at all. And Martin Tomczyk has been saying from Abt, the team principal at Abt Sportsline, himself a race winner around here at the Lausitzring, and the season he won the championship. He's been saying, hang on to that thought. Let's hear from René Rast first.
So feedback from all the cars are low grip, similar issues.
Yeah, low grip. Not unusual at this circuit because they get 3 lots of data at Schubert with their 3 drivers, any team with 3 drivers. So that was the rule, and there's only a 10-second phase in which the announcement between a full course yellow and the full course yellow happening occurs. So actually the chances of you happening to be in the pit lane at the right time are much reduced. But what Martin Tomczyk was arguing was that, well, last year, half of the field might have got lucky and you might have pitted at the right time and it made for exciting racing, and yes, there's an element of chance, but now, this year, because of the rule, 1 or 2 people benefited massively from it, and everybody else, the majority of the field, lost out. And what he was saying was, it's very difficult for Sven Stopper, the race director, to check that everybody's gone past the pit lane entry before he calls a full course yellow, especially on a relatively short lap like Oschersleben. It's almost impossible to do that, and so the chances are that there will always be 1 or 2 drivers that massively benefit from it.
Yeah, Martin Tomczyk, I mean, he says you need to shut the pit lane instantly. Not have the 10-second countdown. Of course, what we saw was that in the one instance where you had the Thierry Vermeulen car with flames coming out of it, and then you had the 10-second countdown, and teams knew if they were on that part of the circuit, there was almost certainly going to be a full course yellow, so duck into the pit lane. You were mentioning Team HRT and Ulrich Fritz, and he was saying, well, what about reintroducing slow zones? And of course, if you follow the Nürburgring 24-hour race, you've got your code 60s slow zones, and he's saying, well, what about isolating a small section of the circuit where you have to drop your speed to no more than, say, 60 kilometers an hour, and that means that maybe 85% of the track is still under green flag conditions. So that's an interesting possible solution. I don't know, but lots of people kind of wading in on the argument. There isn't a perfect answer, is there?
No, there's not. And yeah, there is always an element of chance. And, just playing devil's advocate, would anybody have raised those points if they'd benefited and they'd won the race?
Absolutely.
If the Mercedes had won the race or the Audi had won the race, would they have raised the point? Possibly not.
No, absolutely. And the problem is, you're always going to have something that advantages or disadvantages, because that is motor racing. Safety has to come first. You sometimes have to caution the race or part of the racetrack or all of the racetrack. Doesn't matter what the rule is, someone somewhere is going to get either advantage or disadvantage, because it's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
I think the sentiment is absolutely right, isn't it? Yeah, it is unlucky, isn't it, if you've made your pit stop and then there happens to be an incident and somebody makes like last year, 10 other people that were way behind you in the race, they make their pit stop, they gain a huge advantage. Doesn't matter how well you've driven, how good your pit stop was, you've lost out. So the sentiment of changing the rule for this year, I think, is right. And it's such a small window to, 10 seconds to come in, and it just was weird in a way that on both races it had a massive effect on who led the race once all the pit stops were done.
Yeah, I mean, but what goes around comes around, and what disadvantages you one weekend advantages you on another weekend. And again, as you said, the people who gained from it were not shouting about it And the people who gain from it might lose from the same rule this weekend. And, you know, it kind of all shakes out in the wash normally in the end with all of these rules, that over the course of a season, sometimes you're going to gain from it and sometimes you're going to lose from it. I guess it's just finding that solution where there isn't a dramatic change in the outcome of the race because of full course yellow, safety car, code 60, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and then, you know, even if you got rid of the 10-second countdown, there's still a chance that somebody could have already been in the pit lane when that starts.
Absolutely.
So they're already, you know, the first wheel's coming off. So then do you say to that driver, sorry, unlucky, you've got to come in and do it again? You know, it's difficult, isn't it? I think the thing that we know about motorsport is that the rules and regs, they're put in place for a reason, they're thought through, but you can't cover off every circumstance, and you definitely can't keep everybody happy at the same time. It's impossible.
No, absolutely. The organisers, they want to make a level playing field. The ADAC do a wonderful job of that. You want entertainment for the fans, you want a level playing field for the drivers, you want incentives, and that's all they're trying to achieve here. There's no other agenda other than to make it safe, entertaining and fair. And you know, if anybody can come up with a perfect solution that ticks all those boxes, I'm sure that the ADAC would love to hear from you.
Be a millionaire. Right, on board with Thomas Preining, who's second quickest at the moment. There's only 26 thousandths of a second between our quickest two times in this first free practice session, and this is a better first sector for Thomas Preining as we ride on board with the number 92 Manthey EMA Porsche now. So he is pushing on, coming up towards the end of another split time as he goes through towards the braking zone for turn 8 as he makes his way down to that second gear left-hander, 85 kilometres an hour. It starts to speed up a little bit here now as you attack the curbs and then build up the speed flat out through the next kink as you build up to third gear, and then you get to about 195 kilometres an hour. If we slow it all down again for two very tight corners, the right at turn 10, straight into the left at turn 11. They're both in second gear at about 75, 80 kilometres an hour. You wind it up third gear now through this flat out final turn, 170 kilometres an hour already before you get onto the straight, and then you go over the line, and we'll see what the lap time is like. He lost a little bit of time in the middle sector, but overall it's his best time and the best time of the session so far. 1 minute 21.434 to put him a 10th clear of Kelvin van der Linde in the Abt Sportsline Audi. Maro Engel, we've seen go around the circuit a couple of minutes ago, he's third quickest and the best of the Mercedes. Mercedes in fact are third, fourth and fifth, with Arjun Maini and Lucas Stoltz just behind. And Ayhan Nguyen, another driver, going well in sixth place at the moment, with Nicky Tim seventh in the pits, Christian Engelhardt in eighth, also in the pits, Luca Engster in the pits in ninth, and Lucas Auer in 10th. BMWs are 11th, 12th and 13th at the moment, with Marco Wittmann ahead of his teammate Sheldon van der Linde and René Rast. Ferraris, haven't seen much from them. Thierry Vermeulen's 15th, Jack Aitken hasn't really put a proper lap of the session in yet, and then the McLarens of Clement Schmidt 16th and Ben Deur in 20th place. But it's not all about lap times in this session, is it?
No, although I would wager that this session, this FP1, is probably more significant than some FP1s this year, mainly because the qualifying session for race 1 of the weekend is going to be this time tomorrow, or pretty close to this time tomorrow. Of course, with the coverage of the Ice Hockey World Championships, the race is starting a lot later tomorrow than we'd normally expect. Normally it's 1:30 local time. The race tomorrow is not starting until 5 p.m. local time, and quali is going to be taking place when the race would normally happen at 1:30 local time. So if the weather conditions remain the same, this is a great opportunity for the drivers to actually experience the track at this time of day in these conditions. And it might be that this is a session where they can gain some data and some information that they wouldn't do for an FP1 that's maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning.
It's just not close enough in the DTM, is it? Kelvin van der Linde sets exactly the same lap time as Thomas Preining. Wow. They've both done a 1 minute 21.334.
That's amazing.
There you go, absolute dead heat between them as he makes his way back onto the banking. So once you turn off the tri-oval banking, you run left through turn 1, right through turn 2, and it's kind of S-bend sequence through turns 3 and 4. You go back briefly onto the oval. As you exit turn 5, pick up the speed.
Okay, Clemens, boxy slap, balance read.
Delayed transmission because Clement Schmidt is already in the pits in the McLaren. points for the team on their first weekend in DTM was a good effort, and Clement Schmidt was recovering as well, having had an operation just a few days beforehand, so it was a good effort by the team. Clement's here as well, qualified in the top 3 on Sunday here at this circuit last year, albeit with a different team and with a different car, and was looking good for a podium finish until he had a mighty thud from behind, which came from Pereira, and he was not a happy bunny after that. It put him out of the race, and he lost a potential podium finish. But Clement Schmidt, with bittersweet memories of this circuit, because yes, he was very, very competitive on the Sunday, but ultimately it was a heartbreaking end to the day for him.
Yeah, we've deleted the sound bites from his interview after that, haven't we? The Dirt Motorsport McLaren, I mean, it's a steep learning curve, because they're bringing that car to the DTM for the first time ever this year. Oschersleben was their first opportunity to run it in anger. At the start of the weekend, where most of the teams were doing minute suspension changes, the odd click here, the odd click there, they were changing springs on the McLaren, throwing everything at it, but were very happy, because by Sunday they believe that had it not been for the collision with René Rast, that Clement Schmidt would have come home in 6th place, and if they had done that, that would have been even more spectacular. I mean, as it was, a 15th and a 12th is not unreasonable for a team that are learning the track, a driver that is learning the team is learning the car, and a driver that's learning the car as well. So they're just getting to grips with that McLaren, and with that level of progress at Oschersleben, you get the feeling that they may well be contenders as this season progresses. Yeah,
they are a proper family-run team, aren't they? Rainer Durr runs the team. He's the team founder. He's the team principal. Axel Funk is the team manager. Ben Durr, Rainer's son, is driver of the car, and making their debut this year. Team's fairly well established. They were established as a team back in 1999, but every member of the family has got some sort of role within the team. The other big family-run outfit that we got this year is Powell Motorsport. Maximilian Powell, race winner at the Nürburgring in soggy, wet conditions last year. But this is their home circuit, because they're based in Dresden, which is the nearest city to the Lausitzring, only about around about 30-40 kilometres away from the circuit. So big weekend for the Powell Motorsport team too. Tobias Powell, Max's dad, again runs the team. Max, though, very much involved in the team. They had a nightmare with the pit stops on both occasions, the way it worked out for them, but the second pit stop was a drama with a wheel not being tightened correctly. But he said straight afterwards actually, Max Powell, we win as a team, we lose as a team, nobody's going to blame anybody, everybody makes mistakes. And I thought that was a great attitude to carry on going forwards for team spirit.
Yes, and they had the dubious, or at least Max had the dubious distinction of receiving the first disqualification of the season in race 2 because of aforementioned incident. But he will put that behind him, as you say. He's very much a team player, a great character, and a real asset. Of course, had that amazing win in the monsoon conditions at the Nürburgring last year, and then came here for a follow-up appearance, and that was less successful here, so we'll be wanting to put that to rights, particularly, as you say, it's his home track. He's done a fair few laps around here, knows his way around, and will be one to watch this weekend. Currently at 18th place at the moment, a 1:22.416.
Absolute best first sector so far for the Ferrari of Thierry Vermeulen. So the young Dutch driver, who, remember, only started racing 4 years ago in 2020. He hasn't got years and years of karting and previous junior Formula experience under his belt. And Thierry did a really good job in his first season of DTM last year. He's there currently on a hot lap. He's in 15th place at the moment, but that is all about to change as the number 69 Ferrari comes through and over the line. Or maybe not, actually. No, he was very quick to start with, and then it all fell away towards the end of the lap. But there's promise there, absolute best first sector time. In the end, he didn't improve his lap time or position. But Thierry Vermeulen, who's the son of Raymond Vermeulen, who's the manager of somebody you might have heard of called Max Verstappen, just quite well in something called Formula One, and he helps out. And still to this day, Thierry sends data to Max Verstappen and says, can you have a look through this, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. But Max Verstappen has said, you know, he's a good driver. He said, whenever we do anything together in the same car, he's always within a couple of tenths of a second of me. And if you can be within a couple of tenths of a second in anything with wheels compared to Max Verstappen, I reckon you're pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're pretty reasonable, I'd say. Of course, Thierry Vermeulen has the added trauma as he's going to receive a 5-place grid drop where he qualifies tomorrow as a result of the collision that he had with René Rast. He's also picked up a reprimand and 3 penalty points for giving him the finger as he went past. I thought he was just saying, I hope you come in first place, but clearly not. Yes, he's got that hanging over him. So that's a real shame because this is a year where he's really shining. I know that Max Verstappen watches him racing in the DTM, keeps one eye on him as well as his activities. I know he's trucking around Monaco this weekend, but we'll have one eye on what Thierry is doing as well. And it's great to have that level of interest, of course, Verstappen.com, all down the side of that Emil Frey Racing Ferrari.
Kelvin van der Linde, 2 personal best sectors. He's already back to the top of the times with a 121.138. So we're tied on times with Thomas Preining, but he went better on his previous lap. A little bit wide there for the number 94 Lamborghini of Nicky Tim. So he just kicks up the dust on that slightly untidy exit from turn 1 and gets up the inside of René Rast's BMW. The orange wing mirrors, the orange trim on the front splitter of the car. And that's him making his way back onto the tri-oval out of turn 5 down towards the left-hander at turn 6 when they come back off the banked circuit, the tri-oval banking here, which this huge venue built for IndyCar racing back in the turn of the century, but very quickly opened up as a DTM venue as well, as I say, 25 seasons ago, although a race never happened in 2000 because of the weather. 2001 before we got our first victory. Mercedes won the first 3 races here with Peter Dumbrecht, then the following year Bernd Schneider, and Bernd got the win again in 2003. But Audi have had good success here, and the AB Sportsline team have a strong record here with 5 victories at the Lausitzring, including, of course, one for Nico Müller in that closest ever finish between him and René Rast. Mirko Bortolotti at the moment 7th quickest. In terms of who's flying around the track at the moment, 122 for Nicky Tim. He's just done a personal best lap. He's actually one of the quicker drivers on track at the moment. There's only about half of them on the track. So our best lap times are in the 121s, but nobody's really circulating at the moment on single lap pace. That's a brave place to put a camera as well, isn't it? Right on the wing mirror of Mirko Bortolotti, because that gets pretty close to the wall as well.
We've got spares in the truck. One person who's been fairly quiet, Jack Aitken. He's still in the pits at the moment. He's done 12 laps, but he's languishing down in 19th place. He was out on the lash last weekend. He was at a stag do with the lads in Scotland, and he said it's good to put the human first and the race driver second sometimes, and he believes he will come back stronger for that this weekend. Well, we'll let you know about that on Sunday night. Yeah, he's...
I was very relieved to escape with no career-threatening injuries.
Yes, absolutely. If you don't follow the Jack Aitken Instagram, I would highly recommend it. It's pure comedy for a lot of the way. No pressure, Jack. Yes, something a bit different last weekend, and hopefully he's got him in the zone for this weekend. But a fairly chilled session, say only those 12 laps at the moment, so he's in the pits. He's done less than anybody else, and either there's no urgency for anything, or they're making changes to that. We'll let you know when he appears out on track. At the moment, I'm just looking out the window, and I can't even see his car at the moment. I can see the lights flashing on Thierry Vermeulen's car, so I do believe that he will be joining us back out on track very shortly. Of course, he being the teammate of Jack Aitken.
Only 5 cars on track at the moment.
Oh, Jack's just appeared out the garage. See, as if on cue, his car has appeared out of the garage into the pit lane.
There you go. He's listening.
Yeah, hi there. Give us a wave. So you can just see his car out on the apron, and that shot there, you can see him out just outside the garage. So hopefully he's got something lined up for this session.
Big improvement for this man, Max Powell, up to 8th place with the lap that he just completed in the Lamborghini, the Powell Motorsport Lamborghini, 121.963. Still puts him 0.8 of a second away from Kelvin van der Linde's best time of the session. But having said that, it's relatively spread out at the front because Kelvin is nearly 0.2 quicker than Thomas Preining, who's second, and Thomas is the best part, well, just over 0.3 quicker than Anjan Nguyen in the next to the Porsches, who is 3rd quickest. So he's 0.8 off the fastest time, but if he were to find 0.3 of a second, he'd be up into the top 3. René Rast is making his way around the 3.478 kilometre long circuit at the moment. Also worth mentioning that this is an anti-clockwise circuit compared to most in clockwise directions. That has a different effect on the driver's physique in terms of all the muscles, the neck muscles, the arm muscles, having to fight the wheel going the other way around a circuit compared to what they're normally used to. So that can have an effect as well, particularly on a day where it was as hot as it was last year when we came here in August. So Kelvin van der Linde, who's still lapping at the moment, but on a longer pace run. He's in the 123s, 122s at the moment. Max Powell is currently the quickest driver on the track as it stands. And this is Luca Engstler. Oh, he's getting all the attention now, you see, because he's a race winner. He gets to carry the onboard camera, or one of them, next time out. So Luca Engstler, a multiple TCR touring car champion, coming into the DTM for the first time last season, a point scorer, but now a race winner, and a very popular one as well. His dad, Franz Engstler, who was a race winner in the DTM as well, was there cheering on his son to that victory. Very emotional, was it? And Luca was incredibly emotional when he got out of the car as well. Carry on. When he was finally able to get out of the car, because he squeezed in,
they were part next to each other.
When they came into victory lane, there was a tiniest of gaps left for his Lamborghini. He couldn't actually open the door to get out of the car because he was so closely parked to the other cars either side of him.
I thought it was very funny when Luke Engstler said, coming into this season, my target was to win a race this year.
Tick.
And the first weekend of the year, he says, I probably have to rethink my goals now. Yeah, I think you probably do. Loitering at the top of the championship. Of course, learning a new car, because he was in the Audi last year. He's in the Lamborghini this year, and it's the same engine in the car, but a very different layout of machine. So learning that car, well, he's a quick learner, isn't he? But we know that because he is so successful, and it has been an honour and a privilege to talk about him as he's come through TCR and GT Masters. Now to see him in DTM, and it was such a popular win. You have certain winners that first-time wins, and it's just popular with everybody. And there are a queue of people waiting to congratulate him after that win at Oschersleben. And it was very emotional, and it's really fired him up as well. Really good to see.
Knows he can do it now.
Yeah.
And, you can say what you like about the pit stops and four-course yellows, but when he was at the front, he had the pace as well, didn't he? Absolutely did, and he qualified well as well. Anyway, beside all of that, so Luca Engstler, this long association, this sponsorship that he's had with Liqui Moly. They ran as a family-run team last year, the Engstler team, but they've now been run by Gottfried Grasser's team, the Austrian team, GRT. And that was their second victory in DTM, and they no doubt celebrated late into the night, just as they did when they took Max Powell to his first race victory, and their first race victory as a team from 13th on the grid in the wet at the Nürburgring last year. So that'll been quite a late night, I reckon, at Oschersleben.
That would have made Jack Aitken's stag weekend look lightweight, wouldn't it? So I should think they were partying into
Gottfried was just going to bed when that started a week later.
Yeah, but celebrations that were very, very justified. And it'd be really good. I think it's a great headline for DTM if he can keep those scores up, Luca Engstler, and he can keep scoring well and be a championship contender. An 11th and a first place, well, that's a great points haul from Oschersleben, and he'll be certainly optimistic of doing well this weekend.
Kelvin van der Linde has picked up the pace again, so his last lap was a 121.673, which in itself would have been quick enough for fourth place overall in this first free practice session. Just had a pretty tidy first sector, a little bit down in the second sector. The lap divided into three, as is usually the case. So sector 1 takes you from the start line through turns 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 out onto that straight where you go back onto the tri-oval. Towards the end of that is where sector 1 ends. Sector 2 takes in turn 6 as you turn back off the banking through the big wide sweeping hairpin at turn 7, and then it ends down that little link straight. So it's a very short second sector, and then the third sector takes in turns 8, 9, 10 and 11 all the way through the last bit of the infield, and then the final turn through the banked corner at turn 12. So sector time wise, the quick lap is a low 1 minute 21. First sector takes just under 27 seconds. It's just under 21 seconds for the second sector, but it's the last sector which is the key one, because that's the longest sector in terms of time. That is 33 seconds. So you can have good sectors 1 and 2, but if you mess up the third sector, it has a massive detrimental effect on your overall lap time.
Do you think the cars are sandbagging, or do you think the track is just slower than what it was last year? I mean, we're getting on for 2 seconds slower than... and I know it's free practice and it's not qualifying, but when you were looking at 1:19.3s last year for the pole time, the 1:21.1, I mean, it's quick, but it feels as though maybe just a bit slower than we were this time last year.
Yeah, I'd have to check back on free practice times, but it was 1.2 seconds off the pole time, and I'd say that's standard-ish. I mean, sometimes you do get within. Oschersleben, certainly we were a lot closer to qualifying times once we got to free practice, and within a second of it. 1.1 seconds in free practice, I'd say, pretty par for the course. They don't show their true colours and put the best tyres on and run the lightest fuel loads, of course, until you get to qualifying. And they're not just trying to get quick lap times here, they're on longer runs. Like Kelvin van der Linde has just come in, he's had quite a long run there. They'll be trying to do 6, 7, 8 laps on the trot to see how the car, and the tyres in particular, are affected by longer runs and how the setup can be adjusted there. It's not just about being at the front of the grid, although it is important here. It's not the easiest circuit in the world to overtake on. You can overtake, but you want to be near the front of the grid if at all possible. But there's no good being at the front of the grid and having a car which goes off after 6 or 7 laps, so you need to find that balance. On board, looking at Marco Wittmann now, that heartbreak for him. Very frustrating to have that victory almost snatched away from him with a few minutes to go on the Saturday at Oschersleben. So the 2014-2016 champion goes through, completes a lap, is in 14th place at the moment. Sheldon van der Linde still the best of the BMWs with a 1:22.0, but Marco's just on a 1:22.1. and he's only 17 thousandths of a second quicker than René Rast. So actually, even there's a bit of a gap between them, Sheldon's 9th, Marco's 14th, René's 15th. There's actually only a 1/10 of a second between all 3 drivers, which is almost a perfect scenario. If you're Torsten Schubert and you're running that team, you've got 3 lots of data from 3 very experienced, very quick drivers to compare and to try and sort out the best setup for everybody.
Yes, and all the cars out on track bar 3 at the moment. So Max Powell and Thierry Vermeulen and Ben Durr are in the pits, but as I speak, Thierry Vermeulen now rolling out for another run with, how long have we got left? About 8 minutes, 8.25 minutes. So it's getting to the end of this free practice session 1, of course slightly longer than the FP1s of last year, just making up for the fact that they're not running on the Thursday anymore, giving them 10 minutes extra in FP1. Of course, we get to do it all again later on today, FP2, which will be the 45-minute session. But we're getting to this point where they do now need to start refining setups. Of course, if the wet weather comes along, that really does change everything. And this year, they're running a new Pirelli rain tyre that has not been used in any other GT3 series apart from GT Masters. So it's a completely unknown quantity. Supposedly goes faster, longer lasting and quicker to get up to temperature. And Clemens Schmid tested it at the Red Bull Ring and said the car was more harmonious, I think were the words he used, using it. But if the wet stuff does come, we're going to be in unknown territory for a lot of these teams as they put the wet weather tyres on, the brand new Pirelli Cinturato WHB. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but that is the new rain tyre.
Sounded good to me. Best one in the world. I hope we don't see it this weekend.
It's only because you haven't brought a coat.
It's only because I'm bored. Okay, exactly right. Yeah, because I believed the weather forecast when I left England, which was
never believe the weather
choice.
forecast.
So yeah, if there's any Brawleys for sale in the paddock, I might be getting them later. Nice to see this McLaren in action though. Clement Schmidt improved up to 9th place last time around, and only 7/10 of a second away from the best lap time, and only a 10th away from being in the top 5 or 6. The McLaren, when it's fully unleashed, that 720S has 720 brake horsepower, hence the name 720. But of course they limit it, so all the cars, all the restrictions are put in place, are somewhere around about the 580 brake horsepower mark. It's a 4-litre engine bi-turbo on that McLaren, and it's the first full season that we've had McLaren running in the championship. We did have former Formula One driver Christian Klein a few seasons ago came and did a few guest rounds in a McLaren run by the JP Motorsport squad. That was a different McLaren, the 520, and that was at the 840 at Zolder Nürburgring in Assen in 2021. This is the first full season for any McLaren in the DTM, which is fantastic to have them. And as we said, they certainly gave a strong account of themselves at Oschersleben. And Clement Schmidt, who, as we've already mentioned, was on course for a podium here last year, is going well in 9th place overall and very much on the pace. Jack Aitken has started to pop some more serious lap times in, so he's just got up to 11th in the Ferrari with a 121.945 on his first flying lap as you ride on board with Luca Engstler in his Lamborghini.
And also just out in the pit lane, so he's going out for another run with just over 5 minutes remaining. He's currently at 122.686, so about 1.5 seconds off the fastest time. But as we say many times over and over again, the times don't necessarily mean anything. Kelvin van der Linde also now coming out of the pits. He's the fastest man so far, 121.138. So maybe we're going to see somebody into the 20s in this session. I don't know, maybe. There is Luca Engstler shaking his head a little. Is that in frustration, or is he just hot and tired?
27.3 through the first sector for Jack Aitken, which is about 6/10 down on the best first sector time that we've had. Vermeulen quickest in the first sector. Preining has been quickest in the second sector, and Kelvin van der Linde has been quickest in the third sector. That just shows that this is a lap where it's all mixed up. You know, one part of it is super quick and flat out, another part of it is very tight, very twisty, another part of it are sort of mid-speed corners. So to get a car setup that's quick through all three sectors is almost impossible. You've got to compromise the setup and go, right, where's the bit of the track we need to be really on it to get a quick lap time? But it's pretty rare that you get somebody who's quickest in 2 or 3 sectors here.
Yes, it's just getting that balance, isn't it? And as we said before, it's also negotiating the bumps here at the Lausitzring. Kind of a lot of changes in surfaces, a lot of bumping as well. So getting a car that is just consistent across all 3 sectors, that is the trick, and something the teams are working on. Of course, the Schubert Motorsport have an extra car to gain data from, because there are, of course, 3 cars running for Schubert Motorsport. So 33% more data, I'd say.
Tell you what's not normally an issue here, thankfully, track limits. You're not really able to talk about track limits here, do you?
Well, you do, you're in the wall.
Yeah, exactly. If you get it wrong in a few corners here, well, the track limits is marked by a wall, and that's the end of you. But the corners of the infield don't really attract kind of corner cutting. There's like chicanes out there. It's all kind of hairpins and S-bend sections, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen some drivers outbrake themselves into turn 1 and carry on round the tri-oval. They've put a load of chicanes in there, but sometimes I've seen cars rejoin further up than when they outbrake themselves. But the stewards are on top of that, and there are a load of chicanes strewn around the tri-oval so that drivers can't pick up an advantage by going off on turn 1 and rejoining somewhere out on turn 5.
Very heavy braking. You go from 255 kilometres an hour in 5th gear down to just about 90 kilometres an hour in 2nd gear. It's the heaviest braking zone into turn 1, therefore an overtaking opportunity. The other one, if you get a really good run coming out of turn 5, is at the end of that straight where you go back onto the tri-oval and then hit the brakes through into turn 6. That's another opportunity. But the infield in the middle of the lap, pretty difficult to find a way through, maybe at turn 7 or on the exit to turn 7 if somebody gets it wrong. Archer Miney is on a good lap, looking at the clock at the moment. Lucas Auer was on a good lap there. That's put him into 5th place. But Thomas Preining has gone back to the top of the times towards the end of this practice session, because slow-mo replay then of Lucas Auer in the Mercedes, 3 times a winner around here, pushing hard. But Preining, a 120.782, the quickest lap time of the day so far, so into the 120s, and that is 4/10 quicker than he went before, because it's put him through, well, actually nearly half a second quicker than he went before, because that has put him almost 4/10 clear of Kelvin van der Linde now. Bortolotti's gone second, and Maro Engel has just put in the absolute best middle sector time, but Thomas Preining has just gone even quicker through the middle sector. He was 2/10 down in the first sector, but he's up in the middle sector, so on a qualifying tight run here, I would say. And Maro Engel in the Mercedes, who at the moment is 4th quickest, and Thomas Preining, who you're watching, who was already the quickest car out there so far. So he's winding things up as he goes into the 3rd and final sector. We've got just over a minute left on the clock. It's got a lot busier out there on track. Maro Engel goes second quickest. That did look like a good lap. And this one is even better from Thomas Preining, 120.821. It's not quite as quick as his previous best, but it's still that lap quicker than everybody else. So he's got the fastest and the second best lap times now. So I think they've found their way around the ride height problem.
Yes, whatever they've done at Manthey EMA, it seems to be working well. So Thomas Preining will be greatly relieved. Also, teammate Ian Chan Nguyen in 7th place at 121.541. So that's only 7/10 off the fastest time as well. So looking like they're finding their way around the ride height issue and the general pace issues for Manthey EMA in the Porsche.
Good effort by Arjun Maini as well, the Indian driver. He's gone into the pits now, but 5th place for him at the moment. He had a really solid weekend with an 8th and a 4th. Oschersleben, his best weekend for a couple of years in terms of point scoring. He has been on the podium before. He qualified in the top 3 as well at Oschersleben for the first race. Didn't get off to a good start, dropped him back a few positions on the opening lap of the race, but he equalled his best ever qualifying with 3rd place. So Arjun Maini he's on it again, which is good to see. So 5th quickest. The checkered flag now comes out. Thomas Preining doesn't look like he's on quite as quick a lap this time around. Maro Engel is going to take the flag as well with a slightly slower lap, 4/10ths down on that one. Preining I don't think will improve either unless it's a mega final sector, but it's still good with a 121.2. So Preining and Engel, 1st and 2nd, Porsche and Mercedes. Kelvin van der Linde, who was on top of the times for most of that session, he ends the session in the pit lane already, so he won't improve upon 3rd place. Mirko Bortolotti 4th, so that is Porsche from Mercedes, 3rd Audi, 4th Lamborghini, then 5th Arjun Maini's Mercedes, and 6th the Porsche of Ian Nguyen. Lucas Auer, Mercedes in 7th, Lucas Stoltz, Mercedes in 8th, Ricardo Feller, Audi in 9th, and Ben Durr, quickest McLaren, 10th place. He just did that, just improved right at the end of the session. And Ben Durr is within a second of the fastest time of the session. And for somebody who's brand new to DTM racing and has very little in the way of GT3 experience, that's excellent.
That is very impressive indeed. Less so impressive, the BMW is quite a long way down. 14th place is the quickest BMW for Sheldon van der Linde. Marco Wittmann in 18th, and slowest of all at the bottom of the timing screens is René Rast, 122.130. Maybe they've been working on a race setup, but the BMWs haven't looked like they're going to be troubling the top of the times at any point during this session. But as we say, the night is young, still plenty more running to come, and they might have something up their sleeve for later on in the weekend.
You always have mixed feelings about free practice because everybody says you don't know what everybody's doing. They're not necessarily pushing for quick lap times, don't read in too much into the times. But having said that, it's pretty rare that somebody performs, you know, a bit off the pace in free practice 1, then ends up being absolutely on top of the times in qualifying on Saturday morning, isn't it? It's not normally as much of a turnaround as that, so it might be slightly worrying signs. It might be nothing to worry about, but you're absolutely right. The BMW's down in the lower 3rd of the table at the moment, but we've still got another practice session to come, and that will perhaps tell us more before we get into qualifying tomorrow. But that is a much happier start to a weekend than it was at Oschersleben for the Manthey EMA team. Of course, won the team's championship last year. Olaf Manthey himself, previously a star of the DTM, a runner-up in the DTM championship when he raced back in the 80s. He runs the team and he knows everything there is to know about these cars. Thomas Preining is the reigning champion, and he was quickest ahead of Maro Engel, Kelvin van der Linde in 3rd, Mirko Bortolotti 4th, Ian Nguyen in 5th, 6th Arjun Maini, 7th Lucas Auer, Lucas Stoltz in 8th, 9th for Ricardo Feller, and Ben Durr in 10th place. And then you can see the other McLaren, Clement Schmidt, wasn't far behind either in 12th position. So that concludes the first free practice session of the day here at the Lausitzring. That was the slightly longer session at 55 minutes. Our second free practice session gets underway at 3:45 local time. We'll be on air 5 minutes before that at 3:40 p.m. and that will be a 45-minute session, and that'll be the last chance for the drivers and the teams to get themselves set ready to go for qualifying tomorrow, but not tomorrow morning because we have this different schedule tomorrow with qualifying at 1:30 and the race at 5 o'clock. Just a reminder of how close it is after one weekend of DTM. Luca Engstler on 30 points, leading by just 1 point in the championship fight from Jack Aitken and Lucas Stoltz. Fourth and just behind them is Mirko Bortolotti with Maro Engel and Ricardo Feller just behind them in 5th and 6th positions. But this is the second weekend, rounds 3 and 4 of an 8-weekend, 16-round championship. So still a very long way to go and a very different circuit as well, which can throw up some very different results than we had at Oschersleben. Let's see how it all goes later on today then when you rejoin Brian Oliver and me, Chris Hartley, for free practice 2 in a few hours' time. Thanks for watching. Speak to you again later.